So if you want to play R&B guitar, jazz and similar genres, you can't do that just with major and minor chords. So what you're gonna need is 7th chords. And there may be a lot of confusion about all of the types of 7th chords, the chord names, the chord symbols. So what we're gonna do in this lesson, we are gonna clarify all of the 7th chords, all of the 7 species of 7th chords. And for each chord type, we are gonna cover the music theory, explaining which notes you have in the chord. We are gonna play an arpeggio across 1 octave, and we're also gonna learn 2 chord positions, one with the root on the A and one with the root on the E string. So hopefully guys, this video may become a sort of guide around 7th chords on guitar that you may want to review from time to time to check that you know the music theory of these chords and that you know the basic positions to play them. So let's get started with the first species, which is 7th dominant. And it's when you name a chord just with the letter for the root note and the number 7 without saying anything about being dominant. So for example, a C7. Now for the chord C7, you're gonna find these notes: C, E, G, B flat, so the root, the major third, the perfect fifth, and the flat 7, so the minus 7th degree. So the arpeggio would be C, E, G, B flat. And the 2 chord positions that we're gonna look at are this, which, like we said, has the root note on the A string, fret number 3, and this comes from the A shape of the cage system, and this one, which instead comes from the E shape of the cage system, and it has the root note on fret 8 of the E string. So if we play that as C7 and then F7, it would go something like... But also... This is the chord that creates the tension in a chord progression. That's why we call it a dominant chord. And the tension is due to the fact that between the major third degree and the flat 7, so in C7 between the notes E and B flat, you have a tritone, so 3 tones between these 2 notes. And this interval is usually dissonant. So what this interval does, it creates the tension of this chord. Now I just want to briefly introduce myself in case you guys are new on the channel. Quite a lot of people have just joined this channel. So my name is Simone, I'm a musician and content creator based in London, UK. And if you guys like this type of videos around R&B guitar and music theory and chord position, consider subscribing to this channel because it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps the channel a lot. And if you guys want to have a chart of all of these chords and the degrees that you find in them, you can find everything on my Patreon page. So check out the link in the description below to get the tabs for this lesson and for all of my previous lessons. The second chord species is the minor 7th, and the only difference with the dominant 7th chord is that now you're gonna have the flat 3, the minor 3rd degree. So the chord symbol now becomes C, for example, then the minus symbol or mine 7. So you're gonna have to tell that this chord has a minor triad in it. The notes that you have in a C minor 7 are C, E flat, G, and B flat. So the arpeggio would go C, E flat, G, B flat. This way across 1 octave. And 2 positions that we can look into are this, which again, it is an A shape of the caged system. It comes from A minus 7. And it has once more the root on fret 3 of the A string. And then this one, for example, which is my favorite way of playing a C minus 7 when the root is on fret 8 of the E string. So again, if we play in the key of C and F, it will go like... But also... Now obviously this is not the only way to play a C minus 7 with the root on the E string. If you want to check out the most important positions, the must-know positions to play R&B, neo-soul, jazz and much more, there's a video up here and also linked in the description below which covers 24 chord positions that you must know with the root on the A and E string. There aren't going to be only 7th chords, there's going to be also 9th, 11th, 13th and much more. Now if you guys are into R&B and neo-soul music and you want to learn chord progression progressions, finger picking techniques, the music theory behind them, there is my R&B and Neo Soul acoustic guitar course, which is available on my own school. The link is in the description below, and you will get a very detailed course that will explain everything behind this genre played on acoustic guitar with finger picking techniques, strumming, chord positions, extensions, embellishments, and also 5 Neo Soul etudes to really learn how to play this style. There are going to be PDF tabs available to download, backing tracks, and much more. So if you're serious about learning R&B and Neo Soul guitar in a structured way, check out my course at the link in the description below. Now the third species of 7th chords is -7 flat 5, which essentially means you take a -7, you look at the perfect fifth, and you bring it down half step to get a flat 5, a diminished 5th degree. This chord is also called half-diminished or half-diminished 7th, and the reason for it is because you have a diminished triad, but you keep the flat 7, the -7th, and not a diminished 7th chord. Otherwise, you would get a fully diminished 7th chord. Now, the notes that you find in a C half diminished or C -7 flat 5 are C, E flat, G flat, B flat. So the arpeggio would go this way, across 1 octave as always. And 2 positions that we can look into are this one, which is with the root on fret 3 of the A string. Learn this position is really helpful. 1, 3, 2, 4 is my favorite fingering for it. And this one with the root on fret 8 of the E string. Looks almost like a minor 11 if you guys are familiar with that, but the first finger goes on fret 7 where you find the note G flat, the diminished 5th. So if we play this in the key of C and F once more, it goes something like this. But also, I played the F half diminished here because if you played here, you get an open string, and I always like to show you positions that you guys can move in any key, so without using open strings. So where do you find this half diminished chord? Well, you technically find it more often as the 2nd degree of a 2-5-1 minor, or it could be the upper part of a dominant 7th 9th chord if you guys are into that. So you can find it as a chord that you play in blues. And it's just because it would be the upper part of a dominant 7th 9th chord. Next chord species is a must-know chord, the major 7th. When you say major 7th, guys, you basically mean there is a major triad, but with the major 7th this time. And it is the first time that we find the major 7th degree, so the 7th note of a major scale. So when you say C major 7th, for example, major is not to say there's a major triad, because when you've got a major triad, you don't have to say anything. It's to say that there is a major 7th degree. Because otherwise, in 7th chords, you're going to assume that when you find the number 7 only, it's a flat 7. So a C major 7 is made by the note C, E, G, and B, and an arpeggio would go this way. One position that we must know with the root on fret 3 of the A string is this, which again comes from an A shape of the cage system, and you can move to F major, obviously this way. And one that I want you guys to know with the root on the E string, fret number 8, is this, which obviously you can move to F this way. So let's listen to them. So obviously you find major 7 chords as a resolution of the tension that dominant 7 chords create, for example, in a 5-1 perfect cadence. Then the 5th chord species is diminished 7th. And when we say diminished 7th, that's the chord that people also call the fully diminished 7th, to say it's not the half diminished. So you do find a diminished triad as you do find in a -7 flat 5 chord, but there is also a diminished 7th degree. So a double flat 7, it is the first time that we find this note. This note enharmonically is going to be the same as the major 6th, but we must call it a double flat 7, a diminished 7th interval. So a C diminished 7th would be made by C, E flat, G flat, and B double flat, which yes, it's the same as A, but you must call it B double flat. So an arpeggio would go this way, or this way. however you want to finger it. And one position that we must know with the root on the A string, you guys have seen me playing this very often, is this. You got to learn this fingering, 2, 3, 1, 4 is my way of doing it. And obviously in F, that would be this, okay. Root position on the E string, fret number 8, would give you this position, which again you can move to F this way. But something that I want to tell you about diminished 7 chords is that diminished 7 chords are symmetrical chords. So the distance between all of these notes, C to E flat to G flat, and G flat to B double flat, is 3 half steps, 3 semitones. Now, because an octave is made by 6 tones, 12 half steps if you like, you're basically dividing the octaves in 4 equal parts of 3 half steps. Now, the result is that if you start from any of the notes within the chord, from C, from E flat, from G flat, from B double flat or A, you're actually playing the same chord. So that means you are starting from a different note, but the notes that you find within the chord are absolutely the same. Sometimes you may want to change enharmonically the name of them. So if I play a C diminished 7th, that will contain the same notes as E flat diminished 7th, as G flat diminished 7th, and A or B double flat diminished 7th. But this also means something else, that if C diminished 7th and E flat diminished 7th have the same notes, I can only find 2 more chords with different notes, C sharp diminished 7th and D diminished 7th, because any other chord I can play will be an inversion of one of these 3, C diminished 7th, C sharp diminished 7th, and D diminished 7th. Now, where do we find diminished 7 chord? Well, if you guys are familiar with this channel, you know that you find them everywhere in R&B and neo soul, particularly because you can look at them as the upper part of a dominant 7 flat 9 chord played rootless. So again, to create tension in the chord progressions, and you can also slide them by 3 half steps. You're still playing the same chord, but it adds that flavor that we hear all the time in this genre. Now, the 6th chord species for today is what we call minor major 7. By now, we've discussed the chord names, so we know that if we say minor, that means that there is a minor triad happening. And if we say major 7, the major word is for the 7th degree, okay? So you know the minor refers to the triad, there's a minor triad, 1 flat 3 5, and major 7 means there is the major 7th degree. When you combine this, you get this chord. So which notes do you have in a C minor major 7? You have C, E flat, G, B. On arpeggio would look this way. One chord position that we must know is definitely this, which I love. So you've got your C here, you've got your G, then the B and the E flat. This is my favorite fingering for it. Where do you find this chord? Well, for example, there is a very common thing that people do, which is starting with a minor triad like C minor, gets to a C minor major 7, so only moving the C, the octave, down to B, the major 7th, then go to a minor 7, so only moving B to B flat, and then maybe go to a C minor 6. Basically moving the B flat to A. So you get this. There's a move that you can often hear even in piano voicings. You can definitely move this also to F, same way. And if you play this with the root on the E string, you get this position instead. There's my fingering for it. Please note the major 7th is played by the pinky. And you can obviously do it here, okay? It's a very harsh chord, you need to get used to it. If we play C and F, it goes this way. But also... So where do you find this chord? Well, for example, you find this chord on the 1st degree of the harmonization of the melodic minor and harmonic minor scales. Now the last chord, the 7th species of 7th chord, is what we call the major 7 sharp 5, or augmented major 7th, because basically you're playing an augmented triad. So root, major 3rd, sharp 5, raised 5th, and then the major 7th degree. So a C major 7 sharp 5 would be C, E, G sharp, B, and an arpeggio would go something like this. One chord position that we must know is very simple. You take a major 7, you identify where the fifth is. This is why it is important to know the names of the notes that you play within the chords on the fretboard so that you can identify the degrees. You move it to the raised fifth and you refinger the chord to get this. Obviously you can move it to F. And if you want to learn a position with the root on the E string, you can play this. I play a bar with the ring finger across the D, G and B strings this way, and you can do the same to F, something like this. Now this chord is very often played in jazz but also in pop music, and it goes often major 7 to major 7 sharp 5 to create some tension to this chord that usually doesn't have any tension, and again this is part of the harmonization of one of the minor scales. Now why only 7 species of 7th chords? Obviously you can find other 7th chords like major 7 flat 5 or 7 sus chords, etc. Well, the reason is because when you harmonize the three main scales that you find in music, so the major scale, the harmonic minor and the melodic minor, I'm not considering the natural minor because that's the same as the major, just a relative scale, you get these 7th chord species on the 7th degrees that you harmonize. So if you harmonize any of these three scales, the only chords that you find are these 7 species. Now if you made it this far, congratulations, keep practicing these chord positions. Now you may want to learn other chord shapes like 6 chords and even 9, 11, 13, so the extended chords, so you may want to check out this video for it.